Welcome back to the Liberty Perspective. I'm Joe Marshall. Get this mic here figured out. I don't know. But anyways, you see, I got the mini P with me right there. It is. Anyways, I want to get into Venezuela. I got next couple shows I'm going to be talking about Venezuela. Not so much about what Venezuela was or what Venezuela did or Trump's what he intends to do with Venezuela. I have no idea really. All I can tell you is that the tariffs and everything that are coming down, and a lot of the sanctions that are coming down, the weaponization of the dollar that's coming down across the world, that is giving that's pouring the gasoline on the fire of the anti-Americanism in the world, is as far removed from our founding principles, our founding republic, free enterprise, free markets, is anything from the political left domestically or from the world socialisms, the multitude of different world socialisms on the world stage that have all targeted America for destructions. The narrative, their narrative of what America is, has been bolstered, wittingly or unwittingly, by Trump's move into Venezuela, by Trump's venture into Venezuela. And it's giving a lot of people the opportunity to shit on America. But the one thing that it does is it brings to light the different aspects of this anti-Americanism that's out there, and how it's come to fruition, both domestically and on the world, geopolitical stage, and how it's working against us. So maybe we can take the same opportunity to kind of see what's going on out there and just take a step back and say, okay, listen, this is what's going on, and maybe we can get a picture on how things are working against us from a liberty perspective, from our founding principles perspective, from our founding republic, limited constitution, and once free society perspective, from the perspective of the individual rights and liberty endowed to us by our creator, be it nature or nature's God, okay? From that perspective, we can examine it and see what's actually going on. Let me see, one thing, let's see what I got. Oh, there it is. Okay. I kind of want to bring in, the one thing I want to bring into question is the word Eurasia. Eurasia, Greater Eurasia, it's a movement. It's basically closely aligned with BRICS. The countries, the Greater Eurasia countries, are pretty much one and the same as the BRICS. It's not the same movement, but it's aligned, I've got, those countries are Russia, China, India, and Iran is part of the Greater Eurasia movement, okay? Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa being the prime BRICS countries. Supposedly they got, I don't know, some 20-something countries involved now, right? But since Trump went into Venezuela, whatever that is, okay, we've had the multitude of people just jumping on the pile to take advantage of the situation, to shit on America, to run their spiel, their diatribes against America. And one of them is the Union of Concerned Scientists. We've got President Trump's imperial illegal grab for Venezuela oil is a losing bet. I've got this. These are the titles. I just got some titles on here. This is from the Equation, Union of Concerned Scientists. And just note that the word imperial is in the title. But why wouldn't the Union of Concerned Sciences take this opportunity to shit on America when they've been aligned with leftist, collectivist, progressive, communist organizations over the years? You know what I mean? So why wouldn't they say that, right? But what I'm saying is you got AP, the Associated Press, again, right? After Maduro captured, Trump's tough talk evokes a return to the days of American imperialism, right? Reuters, I don't even know how you say that anymore. Trump's foreign policy called imperialist by experts. Yep. Okay, you're taking the opportunity to shit on America to stir the freaking the shit stir. They get a chance to do it again here. They're validating their accusatories here. Bernie Sanders, socialist. Trump administration running Venezuela, old-fashioned imperialism. So again, the socialist argument against America from the leftist, progressive, socialist left domestic politics is the same shit. They get to freaking shit on America too. Come on. I don't know what's going on here. It's taking a minute here. I don't know what's going on here. I think I just might have to reload that page. Sorry. I gotta reload that page. And I got the greater. There we are. Right back to the same spot. How you like that? Sorry about that. We got Reuters. Okay, got The Hill. CNN. Trump's new imperialism recalls a dark period of U.S.-led regime change. Right? The Guardian. Trump's territorial ambition, new imperialism, or a case of the emperor's new clothes. Imperialism. The Socialist Alternative. This is a revolutionary, this is a magazine that calls itself a revolutionary magazine. Yeah, it calls itself a revolutionary socialist magazine, right? Trump, Venezuela, and U.S. imperialism on the offensive. Again, living up to the accusatory, right? You got Disruption, another revolutionary socialist magazine or anarchist magazine. Disrupt. What is disrupt? To interrupt an event, activity, or process by causing a disturbance or problem. To drastically alter or destroy the structure of something like America. You got to disrupt the normative. That's what it is. This is what this whole LBTGQ shit is, just to disrupt the normative. That's what the whole transgender shit is, just to disrupt the normative. Gay marriage is just to disrupt the normative. Oh, it's normative now, right? I don't know. But anyways, I just wanted to point this out. The Weather Underground from the 1960s was saying to ship the domestic terrorist organization, Weather Underground, Mao communist, anarchist, domestic terrorist revolutionary organization, Weather Underground. Prairie Fire was one of their things, the political revolutionary anti-imperialism, the anti-imperialism of the Weather Underground. Okay, then they got imperialism from 1946 to 1989. Imperialism. The Weather Underground was saying the same shit about America. That was an accusatory that has been levied against America from the socialist, communist vanguard on the domestic left for a long time, okay? On Russian television, a U.S.-backed regime change operations have repeatedly failed from Indian journalists. This is an article from India about an Indian journalist, this guy here, right? Between 1947 and 1989, Washington tried to topple more than 70 governments. This is get their chance to shit on America, right? He gets his chance to shit on America. All right, but notice he said 70. Just keep that in mind. Well, shortly after Trump's venture into Venezuela, Jeffery Sachs was one of the first to shit on America for the benefit of both her domestic and geopolitical enemies. Jeffery Sachs. I don't know if you know who this guy is. But anyways, I was listening to a show by Dr. Jonathan Cooey.
What will come next?
Voice on his was not.
Oh, sorry.
Identity on X. USA and the...
I'm going to try and find this.
And here we go again. We have, I think, a better message than we've ever had in our long history of doing this work.
Hang on a second. There it is.
President,
that would be Jeffery Sachs.
So thank you very much for coming back on the program.
Of course.
Yeah, so,
Dramatic events.
Yeah, it's quite dramatic, and this, of course, was an actual...
Here it is.
Welcome back. We are joined by Professor Jeffery Sachs to discuss the U.S.
Jeffery
attack on
sucks.
Venezuela and the kidnapping of its president, Maduro. So thank you very much for coming back on the program.
Of course.
Yeah, so,
dramatic events.
Yeah, it's quite dramatic, and this, of course, was an actual unprovoked attack, an illegal attack as well. But the
Narrative's already being set, right? Unprovoked, illegal. Got it? So who is this guy, Glenn Deason, right?
The capture or arrest, as the media sometimes refer to it, as the president of Venezuela has been also quite dramatic. How are you assessing the situation, and what are the objectives of the United States here?
Well, clearly this is a blatantly illegal act, but it's one in a long line of blatantly illegal American actions. And just in the recent days, Trump has been threatening a new country every day. He bombed Nigeria.
Now, you have an American Jeffrey Sachs. You're hearing what he's saying. He's shitting on America. He's shitting on America, and he's shitting on America hard. Now, if he was doing this at a domestic table, sitting around a table with a bunch of other Americans, even if there are other American policymakers or a bunch of freaking academics that are all anti-American, it's still, a domestic situation where he gets to, air his grievances, right? But when you think about who this Glenn Deason guy is, and we're going to get into it a little bit here more in a minute, but what I want you to understand is that this guy Glenn Deason, this platform here, this is Kui's going to point out in a minute. The Greater Eurasian podcast is from the Greater Eurasian movement, which is aligned with Alexander Dugin's Russian. They call him Putin's brain or Putin's Rasputin or whatever, right? He's the fascism philosopher of Russia, and the guy who came out in 2016 and put out the video, "In Trump we trust." I don't know if you remember that guy, but he's been hard at work behind the scenes as the lead shit-stirring guru of this whole Greater Eurasia movement, which we're going to get into in a little bit. But essentially, all you need to know for now is that this is an anti-American platform, a geopolitically anti-American platform coming out of Russia, being organized out of Russia or whatever. This Glenn Deason guy is a disciple of Dugin's Greater Eurasia movement. Okay, now Jeffrey Sachs, an American, is going on their anti-American platform to shit on America to bolster their cause. Can you see what I'm getting at here? Can you see what I'm getting at? But Kui's going to point out a couple things on the show that make it even more maniacal what's happening here.
Last week, he said that the U.S. would intervene in Iran if the government acts against the protesters in a way that Trump doesn't like. He has invaded Venezuela.
So this is called the Greater Eurasia podcast, and I guess he's got a Substack. You see how it works, right? It's all one malevolent network, and there's an agreement on what platforms of money laundering they're engaged in.
Just
it's sad.
Recently, he created a special envoy for Greenland, declaring that Greenland will be ours. So it's a threat against Europe, which of course Europe doesn't even acknowledge or recognize because it's so passive relative to the United States. We are not in a constitutional order in the United States. We are in an order led by a military state.
Again, playing into the narrative of America, the danger of America as the tyrannical military state on the world stage that it must be dealt with, right? Is Jeffery Sachs talking about how we're no longer a constitutional order, nor have we been since probably, I don't know, if not Teddy Roosevelt, then at least FDR and his New Deal. And then, I mean, he didn't have any problem with not being a constitutional order when, you know, we had all this leftist policies, all these pro-communist, pro-socialist, you know, New Deal shit going on, Keynesian economics going on, being introduced, right? I mean, the New Deal, the book, was written by, what, Stuart Chase? That FDR modeled his New Deal after, who was a Fabian socialist, you know, John Maynard Keynes, who set up the economic system, the Bretton Woods situation and everything in the world that brought us to our knees eventually to where we are with over 200 countries on the world stage now in debt up to their earballs, to generations into the, you know, in perpetuity, I guess. I mean, is there any way they could ever be paid back by any generation? Where we are now, as far as 200 plus countries being indebted to the world banks, is exactly where Keynesian economics would have us be. Now these countries are all extortable, including the United States. He didn't have any problem with that when we weren't being constitutional, or when we didn't want to pay our debts, or when we didn't want to, you know, balance our frickin' budget. So I don't understand what he's doing here in this interview other than aiding and abetting the Russia, China, BRICS, India narrative, anti-American narrative. The multipolar narrative of destabilizing America to de-dollarize the world. Boy, you know, an American doing that. I just want you to see what I'm seeing here.
We do not obey the U.S. Constitution. Everything is by executive decree. When a congressman dared to mention the U.S. Constitution today, Trump said, "What is he whining about?"
Yeah, Trump's interpretation of the Constitution is that he says the Constitution says that he can do whatever he wants. But how is that different than any other progressive? Any other left or right, Democrat or Republican?
This is ridiculous. Well, this is really, at least what Trump has done is expose the fact that we're at the end of constitutional rule in the United States. What happens when there's a thuggish rule remains to be seen, but in my view, this makes the world extraordinarily.
Now, this Jeffery Sachs is also listed in the same book that I'm listed in. This book would not have been possible without the expertise and invaluable insights provided by Jonathan Cooey, Gavin DeBecker, Merrill Nass, Francis Boyle, Paul Thacker, Brett Weinstein, Lee Smith, Janja Kellick, Elaine Dewar, Derek Harvey, Stephen Quay, Andrew Huff, and Jeffrey Sachs, Richard Ebright, Annie Jacobson. Come on. But Jeffrey Sachs is listed as one of the experts that helped with this book after my name. So, you know, say what you want. Somehow or another, they don't want to talk to me.
Danger.
The whole thing is that book is a fraud. The biology of the book is a fraud. Dr. Jonathan Cooey has been calling that out. Jeffrey Sachs is a named source, information source in that book, along with Dr. Jonathan Cooey. And that's why he's like, now he's associated with this fraud that he tried to call out, and he lost his job because of it, right? But the thing is, what he points out here is Jeffrey Sachs being in RFK Jr.'s book, the Wuhan cover-up, right? The Children's Health Defense book, the Wuhan cover-up, with RFK Jr., who was what? The icon of the medical freedom, populist nationalist right, the savior of the populist nationalist right in America. Now you've got Sachs being involved with injecting himself and his anti-Americanism into the right, alleged right, fake right, medical freedom, MAHA, MAGA, RFK Jr., right? I mean, RFK Jr. himself being injected into the political right is a vector for leftist collectivism. You know, that's what big tent republicanism, big tent right is, right? You let anybody under that wants to call themselves a Republican, whether they're a communist or not, doesn't matter. Just let them in, right? But RFK Jr. was a vector for the political left. Naomi Wolf is a vector for the political left, collectivist left, progressive socialist, communist, anarchist left into the right. Jeffrey Tucker is a vector for the libertarian and anarchism into the political right. Right? You've got Dr. Drew, a vector of super progressive collectivism into the medical freedom right. Dr. Robert Malone's is a vector for the anti-capitalist Marxism of his book. What do they call it? Surveillance capitalism, or the PSYOPs or something, where he was promoting the anti-capitalism of a couple different authors, including the anti-capitalism of Naomi Klein, and I think it was surveillance capitalism. And also you've got Dr. James Thorpe, who was also a vector for flat out communism into the medical freedom right, the MAHA right. You know, this whole thing. And then you've got Sachs is just another level of that. He's a vector into the vector. You know, I don't know. So what you have here is a complete infiltration into the so-called right, conservatives, the new conservatism of the nationalist populist Trump era. Conservatism, is that what they're calling it? But there's another level. There's another level that comes to that. This is just one aspect of it, but I just wanted to point that out, how Sachs isn't only going on international anti-American platforms. He's going in and setting up the right as a vector for this anti-American leftism, progressive collectivism being injected into the right through RFK Jr.'s book. RFK Jr. himself was a progressive collectivist. It's just all fake bullshit. And it goes back to, I don't know, 2015, 2016, when the whole alt-right / libertarian movement, you know, and we're going to be going down through that and how that actually came to be and how it all goes back to, again, Alexander Dugin. And this greater Eurasian movement is also part of that. There's a couple other things on here I want you to hear from Cooey's show here, Cooey's study hall of this interview.
Of course, we're hardly at the end of the story about Venezuela itself. They have arrested a president, but this is not the end of anything. The whole history of U.S. regime change operations, which number probably around 100 such operations since the end of World War II, is a record of bloodshed, violence, deliberate creation of instability, coups, assassinations, civil war. So we don't know what will come next.
The point I'm trying to get across from you, he is just flat out shitting on America. I mean, has there been anybody that's painted America in a worse light? And not just to do it at home, but to do it on the platform, on the anti-American platform of the Greater Eurasian Movement / BRICS aligned movement that has targeted American hegemony in the world and America's liberal democracy for destruction, the American dollar for destruction. This guy is feeding the dragon that's gonna breathe its fire down on us, or at least it says it wants to. I don't know whether it really will or not. I don't know. But he's feeding the dragon there. I haven't seen anything more malevolent, and I've been watching this shit happen for a long time. I don't know. But anyways, Dr. Jonathan Kuhl, you want to see some more of that interview, you can go see him at gigaohm.bio, stream.gigaohm.bio, and then that's the link right there to that show if you want to watch more of that interview and more of that show. There's not too many people calling this shit out. I'm pretty much on my own as far as looking at things from the perspective of a liberty perspective, from America's founding principles, in defense of America's founding principles, our founding republic, our Constitution and limited form of government, and the free society that our Constitution ordains. And our founding principles is enshrined in our Declaration of Independence, against the collectivism that has targeted it for destruction. There is nothing here that is not an aspect of that collectivism, and there's very few people that are calling this out. Dr. Jonathan Kuhl, from what I have seen and what I've listened to, and I've pretty much listened to a lot of what he's got to say, he's one of the last few. Him and, I think Mark Kulak of Who's Satanic, those two guys, they work together, I guess, a little bit pretty much. They're about the only other ones that I've seen even making an attempt to defend America's founding principles. I've looked up every Liberty show and every America's founding principles show, and every one of them's a fake that I've seen. I haven't seen an actual show on Rumble or any of the other so-called right-wing media freaking shows that is an actual defense of America's founding principles. And that's not just a defense for America. It's a human thing. It's a human thing to want to defend the dignity of the individual, the sanctity of the individual, the autonomy of the individual, and the freedom of the individual, that the people of each and every individual matters, against the collectivism, which is basically, as Rousseau called it, the mutual surrender of our natural liberty, so that we can wait in line for our ration of redistributed wealth that comes with collectivism. So, but, after watching that show, and I heard this, the Greater Eurasian Movement, I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, who is this guy? Who is this Glenn Deason? I gotta look this guy up. And it didn't take long for me to confirm my suspicions that it was exactly what I heard. An instant I heard that it was a Greater Eurasian Movement podcast. Who's Glenn Deason? And what is this Greater Eurasian Movement Deason is affiliated with? And the answer leads us straight to Russia's leading intellectual imperialist, communist, regionalist, national socialist, architect of the geopolitical Greater Eurasia Movement and global shit stirrer, Alexander Dugin, right? Dugin's teachings aren't only behind the geopolitical assault against American hegemony. That's a communist word in and of itself. The American culture, or the hegemony or culture of any society targeted for destruction with, any communist revolution. And it's a word coined, or if you want to use a capitalist word, capitalist coining of the word hegemony. of a capitalist. It's a capitalist word coined, right? Antonio Gramsci is the communist that coined the word hegemony. On the world stage, right? Dugin's teachings aren't only behind the geopolitical assault against American hegemony on the world stage, such as the Eurasia and BRICS movements. He's also the intellectual push behind the global national socialist, so-called world national conservative movement, intent upon infiltrating domestic politics and destroying targeted countries from within, again, primarily the U.S. And this is what I'm saying. Sachs being exposed there not only is part of his left, extreme left politics. Globalism is affiliation with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and the millennial goals, with which he helped Sasha Stone, through Sasha Stone's Humanitad. They came up with that millennial goals that became the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which is all based on the redistributive justice of human rights. So, all collectivist, right? This world national conservative movement, just to give you a picture, as the World Communist Party, communist movement back in the day, anarchists and communists together, you might want to say, but as the communists had their communist internationals back in what they called the Comintern's back in the earliest 20th century, I think all the way up through like the 1940s and 50s, maybe even, I don't know. They had several of them, the Comintern 1, 2, 3, 4, I don't know how many they had, 5 maybe. But it was in Paris they held one, maybe England, but they were run out of Moscow. And what it was is to bring all the communist parties, communist affiliated parties, labor movement parties, unions, and the vanguard revolutionary socialist agitators to Moscow or into these meetings where they would get their directions and be sent back to their home countries to infiltrate, to inject the communist ideology and mindset, like it was an intermuscular injection of this communism into the different countries in domestic politics, including the USA. And the USA had a multitude of different things that was happening in the early 20th century that was as a direct result of this communist infiltration into our, as pushed by the Comintern, into our domestic politics, our progressive politics, you know, on a multitude of levels, and I've covered it on several of my shows here, you know, but this world national conservative movement set up by Alexander Dugin is kind of national socialisms or fascisms, if according to the communist anarchist left, is national socialisms, fascism, or populist nationalist, if you want to throw fascists in there. It's their Comintern. So they get to inject, they take all the National Socialist agitators, neo-Nazi organizations, white supremacist organizations, it doesn't matter, it's a unite the right on a global scale, where he gets to take, or they take, and it's being led out of Russia, this organization of this world national conservative movement, where they rebrand fascism or National Socialism as conservatism. And they bring everybody in, and they get centralized, and then they send everybody back to their respective countries to infiltrate, and they intermuscular injection of the ideology and mindset of National Socialism into the right-wing politics of their own countries, into the domestic right-wing politics. Communism was injected into the left-wing politics. Fascism, National Socialism, fascism's kind of, but nationalism is being, populism is being injected into the right-wing politics, including the United States. It's not a coincidence that this was happening, this was all getting going at just about the same time that the alt-right pops up, just in time to get Trump elected for the first time in 2015, and again the national populist movement for the national conservative movement just in time to get Trump elected for his second term. You think it's a coincidence? This stuff just popped up out of nowhere? But anyways, this is kind of what I wanted to show you. What I'm seeing here is that he's also Dugin's also the intellectual push behind the global national socialist, so-called world national conservative movement, intent upon infiltrating domestic politics and destroying targeted countries from within, right? Eat us from the inside out. Once again, primarily the USA. It's no coincidence that the somewhat simultaneous rise in American politics of the populist, nationalist, alt-right, national conservatism, along with right-wing conspiracy-laden QAnon, affiliated with the Flynn movement, Stop World Order, QAnon, then Sasha Stone was loosely affiliated with QAnoners too, right? Lyndon LaRoche guy, he's the guy that infiltrated, everything. He came out of the New Left, just like the neocons did, just like the Weather Underground did, right? Came out of the same New Left as all them guys. But what I'm saying is no coincidence that the somewhat simultaneous rise in American politics of the populist, nationalist, alt-right, national conservatism, along with the right-wing conspiracy-laden QAnon and Lyndon LaRoche cults, they were infiltrating the Tea Party. Lyndon LaRoche they were starting to, I used to write for a Tea Party paper. I did a show on this, but earlier on, but it was to the point where they were publishing, the Tea Party paper was called The Patriot, and I used to write for them. But I noticed that a lot of these articles were promoting National Socialist tenets of National Socialism rather than our founding principles. And after I did some digging, I found out these guys were all associated with Nancy Spanis and all the different people that were associated, just one off the top of my head, and other guys, a lot of false flag guys like, Dave, false flag Dave, I can't remember his last name, but anyways, these guys, they were promoting this National Socialism, kind of disguising it as our founding principles. And they infiltrated the Tea Party, and they freaking really screwed up those people in the Tea Party. They were no longer espousing our founding principles anymore. It came to the point that the local Tea Party out of Syracuse, New York, was actually in the streets protesting with the anarchy and anarchists and communists of the Occupy Wall Street movement. The 99% versus 1% people. The anarchists, they were protesting with these people. They couldn't see how the convolution in that they were defeating basically became the means to their own end when they did that. And Steve Bannon was involved with the Tea Party and helped freaking crush the Tea Party too. But Lyndon LaRoche, the LaRoche Pack was very instrumental, and they flooded the Tea Party papers with multiple writers writing multiple articles that were somehow nationalist and somehow pro-New Deal at the same time. It was crazy. Anyways, and later the fake right, secular, anti-woke, Melissa Chen, right? You got this leftist anti-woke people coming in. What's the other one? James Lindsay, the new atheist guy that's all of a sudden an anti-woke right guy, right? You got new age people that were coming in there. Sasha Stone, again. There was a bunch of other ones too. These noosphere guys, Buckminster Fuller and all these other guys that were coming in there. Barbara Marx, Hubbard, and all these other guys that were coming in. You see, I mean, it's all part of the same infiltration into the right, the medical freedom right, the medical freedom movement, the populist nationalist right. They were absorbing all these people. The new atheist movement, Richard Dawkins, right? Libertarian anarchism of the likes of Brownstone Institute, and also that would include like the Cop Watch and fuck the police kind of shit, right? Yeah, so you got the anti-woke, new age, new atheist, libertarian anarchism of the likes of the Brownstone Institute, Jeffrey Tucker, right? The intellectual dark web, there are more vectors of the political, progressive, socialist, communist, anarchist left being injected into the populist, nationalist right all of a sudden. Children's health defense, same shit. Right? Sasha Stone, same shit. And their humanitad that even incorporated Mr. Anti-collectivism himself. G. Edward Griffin got rolled into that humanitad, the same humanitad that came up with, he got rolled into, I don't know if he was involved with humanitad, but he was involved with Sasha Stone's International Tribunal for some kind of justice. They're all signed their frickin' in their thumbprint with blood. And G. Edward Griffin wasn't just involved with that, he was a commissioner with that. I don't know. Sasha Stone called out every government in the world. He wasn't just anti-American government, he's anti-governments of the world. While he's, flying from the dark side of Mars to the moon and back and shit. Actually, I did a couple shows on Sasha Stone. You gotta see it to believe it. And this ties to the medical freedom movement, the ties to the fake populist nationalist right, where all these people that were all of a sudden what is now known as the populist national right are almost every single one of them to a T vectors of progressive, leftist, progressive, collectivist, socialist, anarchist, communist ideology and mindset into the American right. They're vectors for that injection of that collectivism into the American right. Okay, we got the Brownstone, the anarchism, libertarian anarchism of Brownstone Institute, the intellectual dark web, children's health defense, Sasha Stone's humanitad, and International Tribunal for Natural Justice, that's what it was, and the whole of the so-called medical freedom movement, all the same shit. All the same shit. All of which have worked to hijack the American right away from the founding principles and republic, away from our founding principles and republic, our Constitution limited form of government, just in time to either get Trump elected or at least make it appear feasible that he got elected twice. This is what I'm going, twice, okay? There is nothing that Trump's quote-unquote conservatism has in common with our founding principles. That's just from the get-go. From the get-go. And that alt-right, we'll be getting into some more of this. But anyways, just to kind of put an elevator pitch out there on this, as I was seeing this shit, it's all kind of flashing through my brain when I'm watching that show with Dr. Cooey is doing that study hall with Sachs on Glenn Deason's Greater Eurasia podcast. I had to write this down so that I at least had my own elevator pitch so that I would understand. I sent this out to a couple people. I don't know if they ever saw it or not. I don't know. But I'm writing it down for myself mostly. The trigger for me was Glenn Deason's podcast name, The Greater Eurasia. I heard it in the other room. I was like, holy shit. I know what this shit is. Eurasianism, or rather Dugin's Neo-Eurasianism, okay, is a revolutionary geopolitical global national socialist, a global national socialism. See, national socialism is just as much a global collectivism as communism. That's an epiphany worth consideration. But anyways, it's a global national socialist philosophy of which Russia's Alexander Dugin is the leading meddling shit-stirring guru. Yeah, that's what he is. Deason is a proponent or disciple of Dugin and his so-called fourth political Eurasianism. This is Deason here. Crisis of modernity. Okay, modern society today, everything as it exists today is the modern society of today. It's modernity. Post-modernity, when you want to set up a society that is post-modernity, which means you've got to destroy the existing modern society as it exists so that the new modernity, postmodern society can come in. Dugin is also a traditionalist, capital T, traditionalist, which is more of a pre-modern versus postmodern. They want to go back to some utopian pre-modern society, I guess. But anyways, it's all collectivism anyways, regardless of how you look at it. That Dugin guy was, and I just showed you, doing an interview with Alexander Dugin there, and also he's Dugin and his Eurasian system, philosophy, and strategy. This paper takes the attempted assassination of Russia's political philosopher Alexander Dugin, seeking to find the reason behind such an attempt by analyzing Dugin's philosophical and strategic system and his role in guiding Russian policies. Yeah, his daughter, he was targeted for assassination, and they wound up killing his daughter. You know, yeah. But anyways, yeah, they're playing for keeps over there. But anyways, Dugin is a proponent, a disciple of Dugin's fourth political Greater Eurasia, okay, which presents itself as an evolved, and what that is, it presents itself as an evolved, or Dugin presents it as an evolved three-way synthesis instead of a two-way synthesis between a thesis and an antithesis. To get the synthesis, this is a thesis, antithesis, and a semi-antithesis. I don't know. It's a trinthesis. Evolved three-way synthesis via some bullshit trialectal versus a dialectal. My word instead of dialectal, between Dugin's own versions of libertarianism, communism, and fascism. Whatever you think libertarianism is, or what liberalism is, or what communism is, or what fascism is, you might as well forget him, because Dugin's got his own version of that shit, and all it's going to do is convolute you so that you really don't understand where the frick he stands, which is part of the frickin' deal. That's part of the anarchy of it. Because in any good social revolution, the more chaos you can introduce, the better, and just whatever chaos there is just revolutionary progress and progress. The more chaos there is, the more revolutionary, it's just more revolutionary progress and progress. Okay, so via some bullshit trialectal between Dugin's own versions of liberalism, communism, and fascism, that's what his new Eurasianism is. Okay, guess who the main Eurasian countries are? They're the BRICS countries of Russia, China, Iran, and India. The three main countries of the Greater Eurasian movement are Russia, China, India. Okay, BRICS, of course, is Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and I guess they got like 20 plus countries now representing 44% of GDP and maybe 56% of the world's population. It's not a small thing. At least that's what they're saying that they are. I don't know. Don't believe anything anybody says anyways, but that's what the narrative is, okay? Together, they can bring down the liberal tyranny of the capitalist, individualist globalization of U.S. hegemony. The liberal tyranny in the world for a more multipolar one, okay, versus a unipolar world of American at the dominance, where it's just thugging on everybody, man. We're using the dollar as a weapon. They're throwing these sanctions around, the tariffs, you know, and we need to get rid of them so that we can have set up our own system, de-dollarize the world, and, you know, to some extent, I can see where they're not unjustified in trying to do this, regardless of who they are or what social philosophy these individual nations have amongst themselves, you know. But all these tariffs, all these sanctions, all this the dollar, the fiat dollar, the Keynesian system of a fiat dollar, the dollar being weaponized, they're just as far removed from our founding principles is what BRICS and the Greater Eurasia movement are running on. They're just as far removed from our founding principles as the progressive left, anarchist communist, anti-American, structural white supremacy and racism of the American left is. Just as far removed from our founding principles as any other collectivism or any other socialism, be it domestic or geopolitical. That's kind of the key thing to understand in all of this. As America has adopted the progressive socialist mindset of the rest of the world, this is where we come in contention with the rest of the world. It's kind of crazy, but that's where we are. Together they can bring down the liberal tyranny of the capitalist individualism. They're going after the individualism, globalization, which is just another term for the spread of capitalism around the world, of the U.S. hegemony in the world for a more multipolar one via a united Eurasia run out of Moscow. Okay, the American trader, Jeffery Sachs trader, is just my opinion. I spelled trader wrong. Jeffery Sachs, as you may well know, is also a longtime proponent of the same multipolar world. Jeffrey Sachs has been doing this shit for a while, shitting on America on the geopolitical world stage for a while now. Jeffrey Sachs on China's historic push for multipolar world to end U.S. dominance.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report.
The world today is undergoing profound historic changes as permanent members
Development Solutions Network. He's also served as advisor to 3 UN Secretaries General and currently serves as a Sustainable Development Solutions advocate under Secretary General Antonio Guterres. His latest article, published, is headlined, "The Need for a New U.S. Foreign Policy." Professor Sachs, thanks so much for being with us. All of the diplomatic gestures of China.
This guy, right off the bat, is a UN. He's a UN globalist. Right from the back, right from the get-go, right?
Yeah. You know, the meeting with Macron in Beijing, with Lula in Beijing, brokering this deal between Iran and Russia, but Israel and Palestine. This hardly gets attention in the United States media. But around the world, the headlines are far more, there are far more headlines about this. Talk about the significance of this, and if you see a direct parallel between all the headway that China is making and increasing U.S. hostility towards China.
Thanks, Amy. Very good to be with you. And indeed, this is a crucial topic. And as President Xi Jinping said in that meeting with Macron, it is a historic watershed that the world is living through right now. What China is after, if we view it from China's perspective, is what was also said, true multilateralism. And what that means, or true multipolarity, another term that they use. And that means they don't want a US-led world. They want a multipolar world. And the basis of that is that the United States is 4.1% of the world population. China is 17.5% of the world population.
Whatever justification he's got don't frickin' matter. It's all pro-China. He's a Chinese apologist for China's, the Chinese Communist Party, the move for collectivism in the world. All of which have targeted our founding principles for destruction, our founding republic for destruction. And Sachs has championed the undermining of America both domestically and around the world. Democracy Now! I mean, anyways, so, yeah. Yep, Jeffrey Sachs, as you may well know, is also a longtime proponent of the same multipolar world. I think that was back in 2023, as is our old buddy Matthew Ehrt. Matthew Ehrt has also been pushing the same anti-American,
So I think this,
multipolar shit
this
led by
question is,
Russia and China.
actually has very, very deep implications.
See, Matthew
What is the
Urt,
West
Glenn
can
Deason
help
right there.
us see a lot of things through different angles and bring new.
Yeah. Glenn Deason and Matthew Urt right there. See. Of course, he's a LaRoche cult guru, pushing the national, social, convoluted, new left LaRoche pack spiel. I mean, but I've did a couple shows on Matthew Urt. You should check that out if you want to see how he kind of interjected himself and gone after American history to hijack American history for the benefit of the anti-American movements, both domestically and geopolitically. I just want you to see, here he is again. Matthew
Welcome
Urt.
everybody to this week's Pluralia Dialogos, where I'm very, very honored to be joined by two fantastic minds, analysts Alex Craner and Glenn Deason, who I think everybody here watching this live stream or the recording already know very well. And we're...
Well, not everybody, but kind of introducing you this whole concept of what this greater Eurasian movement is and kind of who's involved with it and how they've been affiliated with the medical freedom movement, the new populist nationalist right. I did a couple shows on Matthew Urt, just to put it out there that, you know, the right, the whole political right in America, the conservatives in America were being duped in large part that they thought they had this medical freedom people, these doctors, these scientists that were going to help save our free society from the lockdowns, the tyrannical lockdowns of the left as they were perceived, even when they were being put down under Trump. In New York State, Trump was president when New York State was locking everybody down in 2020. You know, but anyways, we were under the impression, a lot of people were under the impression that these are the people that are going to help us. These are the intellectuals, the great barrier. I can't even remember. What the heck is that? No, I got to say that. Great Barrington Declaration. That's what it was. I had to look that up. Yeah, I had to look that up. But anyways, Jeffrey Tucker was involved with that. The intellectuals, the Great Barrier. Wasn't Jay Bhattacharya involved with that too? I don't know. But you had Matthew Urt, a couple different shows there. He's been on with Glenn Deason too, just like Jeffrey Sachs has. Furthermore, per Russian television, okay? This is an article out of Russian television. Okay? With its plan to unite Eurasia from sea to shining sea, Russia is betting the old days of total U.S. economic supremacy are now coming to an end. Yay. This is September of 2021, this article. Written by Glenn Deason, if you haven't noticed, okay? Russian television. What he says in this article is what the Greater Eurasian Partnership should focus on, therefore, is cooperation between and integration of national geo-economic platforms and other formats encouraging Eurasian integration. For example, China's Belt and Road Initiative is harmonized. China's Belt and Road Initiative is harmonized with the Moscow-led Eurasian Economic Union under the patronage of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. All the same malevolent show. India, South Korea, as far as when it comes from America, what difference does it make if you're getting pulled down by a pack of wolves? What difference does it make to anything being pulled down by a pack of wolves? Which wolf gets to take the biggest chunk once biggest piece of the carcass. I mean, to an elk or a deer or anything else that a pack of wolves is following down. What difference does it make to that animal which wolf in the pack gets to run away with the biggest frickin' piece? And that's the way America needs to look at this whole Eurasian movement, this whole BRICS movement, this whole this fight on the world stage between all the different world socialisms that are happening, between the World Economic Forum model of stakeholder model of Great Reset, between the United Nations World Socialist global governance model, sustainable world UN model, New World Order, or the BRICS Greater Eurasia model, or the anarchist model, the anarchy that's out, the anarchists that are out there. They're all the different collectivisms, all the different world socialisms that are all vying. They're all wolves in the same pack that are taking America down, that have targeted America for destruction, and have been hunting us down for 200 years. The philosophy has been eating away at us. It was in 1936 that Robert Dale Owen's Declaration of Mental Independence was written. It was in 1836. So it's pretty much 200 years. Difference doesn't make which wolf takes the biggest freaking piece, right? This is the way you kind of look at this from a liberty perspective, from the defense of our founding principles perspective, from the defense of our republic perspective. But anyways, for example, China's Belt and Road Initiative harmonized with Moscow's led Eurasian Economic Union under the patronage of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. India, South Korea, Kazakhstan, Turkey, Iran, and a variety of other states have their own distinctive Eurasian integration initiatives that could be accommodated and harmonized under the concept of a multipolar Greater Eurasia of sovereign equals. Yeah, so there we are. That's what it is, This multipolar, this is the guy that wrote that's being interviewed, but Jeffery Sachs is on his show, on his platform, shitting on his own country. The problem for Jeffery Sachs is that Dugin and Deason's Eurasianism has also targeted the centralized world socialism of the UN model of global governance, along with its millennial and or sustainable development goals. He actually helped set up with medical freedom, New Age medical freedom guru Sasha Stone, through his Humanitarian organization. The links in the they don't want that either. The liberal democracies of the left is the UN model. The links in the anti-American chain continue to come together from there. For one, Alexander Dugin's World National Socialism, World National Conservatism. See also here his World National Conservatism. They rebrand National Socialism and even fascism as conservatism in order to make it sound softer and kinder, to get more people, get more buy-in, as they push it like into American, inject it into America's domestic politics and the interior domestic politics of different countries around the world. Kind of unite the right on a global scale, right? But you can see here the radical conservatism of the Heideggerian right. And Heidegger is just one of these philosophies that the Nazis associated themselves with, But Dugin's name is in this article 70 times. The word conservative is in there 74 times. I mean, just read the article, And that is from, what the hell year was that? 2022. That came out in 2022. Okay, just so that we have a timeline here a little bit. See also here, you got Anton Shekhov's This guy was been kind of releasing, information about what Russia and the right wing, the National Socialists and stuff like that in Russia have been kind of putting together this World National Socialist movement, World Nationalist Conservative movement. Sorry, it says Russia is now building what it calls the World National Conservative Movement. A number of the internal documents passed to me by Moscow-based Sova Center provide an insight into the agenda and structure of the World National Conservative Movement. Notice the shield. The driving force behind the movement is Russia's imperial movement, Rodina. Was founded in 2023, and one of the co-founders, Dmitry Rogozin. They've got all these names, some people that are involved in here. The Russian imperial movement, whose self-described ideology is Christian Orthodox imperial nationalism. You think the rise in Christian nationalism in the past 10 years, or nationalist Christianism in the past decade and a half to 2 decades is a coincidence, right? The manifesto of the movement, it's right in here. I can't get it any bigger so you can see. I'll just read it. The manifesto of the movement claims that the world is governed by the ideology of liberalism, multiculturalism, and tolerance. Okay, this, in the view of the activists, results in the erosion of nations, massive migration from countries with foreign civilization bases, falling away from religion, replacement of spirituality with materialism, impoverishment of cultures, destruction of the family, and healthy moral values through abortion. The erosion of family and healthy moral values through abortion, propaganda, and debauchery, and acceptance of sexual perversions. I mean, there's a lot of that could be real similar. I mean, that National Socialist ship sails really close to our founding principles, to the point where there's a convolution and confusion between the two. If you're not rooted in what our founding principles actually are, you're going to get confused there. You're not going to see the trap. Okay? Not going to see the trap. The World National Conservative Movement aims to counter liberalism and... Oh, wait a minute. I'm just going to finish reading here. Furthermore, the manifesto refers to the supranational institutions such as the European Union and NATO, and argues that these forces represent the global cabal. Cabal being a word in collectivist, socialist, communist doctrine, a common word through anarchist, socialist, communist doctrine, and national socialist doctrine. All the collectivist revolutionary doctrine is being associated with some kind of Jew conspiracy. Just saying, it's not always, but a lot of the times it is. Okay, so furthermore, the manifesto refers to the supranational institutions such as the EU and NATO, and argues that these forces represent the global cabal, right? Which in Russian culture discourse is essentially a euphemistic reference to the global Jewish conspiracy. Okay. Yeah. The World National Conservative Movement aims to counter liberalism. What is this liberalism? What does he mean by liberalism? Do you think counter liberalism? I mean, a lot of guys on the right in American politics are going to say he's counter liberals. Man, we need to own the libs, man. We got to jump on this bandwagon. Well, his liberalism, what he's referring to liberalism, is individual rights and liberty. The individual, free markets, free enterprise of our founding principles. That's what Dugin is referring to here as liberalism, that a lot of the people today goes, oh, we need to own the libs, man. They're going to get confused. They're going to jump on this bandwagon, not maybe not, well, to the point now where maybe they do and don't give a shit anymore, that they're actually targeting our own founding principles for destruction, jumping on this bandwagon that is so closely aligning itself with and convoluting itself with our founding principles. I've seen shows, and one of my earlier shows when I went into the on the nationalist right, going into the collectivism of the nationalist right in the United States. On one of my earlier shows, I showed a video from the 1930s where the Nazi Party, prior to our involvement in World War II, the Nazi Party filled in New York City, Madison Square Garden, filled Madison Square Garden with Nazis under pictures of George Washington. Again, associating or affiliating themselves with our founding fathers and founding principles. And I can take you back right here just for a second. They've gone after our history. This is from the American Conservative, how American nationalists, Alexander Hamilton Federalist Party, provide a blueprint for conservatives today. And they show you, they go down through this article, and how our founding fathers were nationalists. Well, nationalism is a socialism, and our founding fathers were not collectivists. But they're hijacking that history. They're hijacking that history to, again, undermine America, right? Yeah, so they're, the World National Conservative Movement aims to counter liberalism. Okay, not just in America, but on the world stage, and the which is like liberal democracies of the world, the UN model, and the globalization, which is the spread of capitalism around the world. Okay, by staging a conservative revolution and bringing far-right parties to power in Western societies. I'm not making this shit up. I'm not the only one to see this shit, right? The manifesto claims that a victory of the conservative revolution, even in one country, will provide an example for other countries. Establishing the World National Conservative Movement is considered the first step in this direction. And it was in 2019 that the first National Conservative Movement, this article here is written in 2015. And it was 4 years later, in 2019, that the United States held its first national conservative movement of nationalists. Just saying, again, note the shield. It's all coming together here, right? So, yeah. But anyways, the links in the anti-American chain continue to come together. From there, for one, Alexander Dugin's World National Conservatism, right? See also here, that's what I just went over, okay? Has also become mainstream in America within the past few years. The first National Conservative Conference being held in 2019. Check out the speakers list here. And it's kind of crazy, yeah. Okay, John Bolton, one of the guys that got involved. It wasn't too long. Let me show you a little something here. Let me show you, if I can show you a little something here, man. If I can show you here. Yeah, if I can show you this, John Bolton. This is from a show I did earlier on the collectivism, deciphering the collectivism of the nationalist right in America. It's one of my earlier shows. But the conference, this National Conservative Conference, which was July 19, confirmed speakers. John Bolton is one of them. Okay, one of which is John Bolton, who back in 2013 got caught up in a Russian spy ring. 2013, remember Butina? I can't remember her name. The Russian spy, the woman, the hot tamale Russian spy, they got honeypotted. they got honeypotted. She infiltrated the high ranking of the National Rifle Association. She was in a CPAC. She was ringing the bell of freedom at the NRA. This Russian spy, right? They all took her in. They all got smitten by her. She was, I don't know, she got hooked up with some prominent Republican and everything else. Back in 2013, got caught up with a Russian spy ring infiltrated into the NRA and conservative, quote-unquote, political rings, making a video for a Russian spy gun group, Right to Bear Arms, founded by the two spies, Alexander Dugin and Torsin, and Maria Butina. Involved in which, per the Rolling Stone, he addressed the Russian convention in Moscow, praising she seduced these guys into coming to Moscow for a pro-gun conference. Like, that's going to happen, right? But they all go there. Putin's autocratic country as a force for democracy. Yeah, John Bolton called Putin's Russia, in his new constitution, a force for democracy in the world, and encouraged the Russian activists, good luck on your journey, he said, into a new century of freedom. You see, it's still here.
Thank you for this opportunity to address the Russian people on the 20th anniversary of the adoption of the Russian Constitution. This document signaled a new era of freedom for the Russian people and created a new force for democracy in the world. While more time has passed since the United States created our own Constitution,
Yeah, but this whole article on Rolling Stone kind of goes into this Russian spy thing that the NRA got caught in, the right, the CPAC right, the conservative Republican right. I mean, you didn't hear nothing from Mark Levin on this. You didn't hear nothing from Glenn Beck on this shit because they were all, who's going to frickin' put that out there, right? Right? When the spy got arrested. And this article right here is really an interesting article from Rolling Stone, and if you want to get into it, it goes into pretty good detail, really. See if they got a picture of this Russian spy girl in here. There she is. There she is at a gun show. Yep. They got honeypotted, man. She went to CPAC. She was right in there. She wound up doing some time because she was an unregistered agent, spy agent for Russia or some shit, right? And they all got smitten by her, man. She kind of, I don't know, man. You gotta watch that. I mean, I don't know. This just another aspect of this infiltration of Russian influence in right-wing politics that they were pushing. And it was right at the tip of when they were starting to do that, and they were pushing it hard, right? But they all got infiltrated. They went over to Russia, and they were over there, and it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing that they fell for that shit. But they did. John Bolton was one of those guys that fell for that shit. Now you got Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson spoke at this national conservative. Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel spoke there. There's other people that spoke there too. A couple of them here. You can see some of these. Maybe you recognize more of these people than I do. But, Yaram Hazany, the Christian nationalist Jew guy. The Jewish Christian national. I don't know. I don't get it. But anyways, then you've got all these different guys in here. You might recognize a couple of them here. J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance was one of the speakers. He's been a speaker. He's been speaking at these national conservative rallies and conferences or whatever. Okay. The infiltration goes all the way to the top. and you can listen to, you can go on this website, and you can go to each one of these people that are listed on here. You click on their picture, and you can listen to their speech at that conference. And J.D. Vance is really smooth in this. You got to listen to the whole half an hour, 40-minute speech or whatever it is that he gives. He basically leverages the population pyramid and why families aren't having kids anymore and that kind of thing, and leverages the opioid crisis. He kind of throws that in there too. He brings that up and how America has to, do better for the opioid crisis. But he's not. But he invokes these things and uses these things as leverage to advance the nationalist agenda, to advance the progressive growth in government and progressive nationalist agenda, not to help the families or to help people with raising families as much as it is to leverage the individualism to demonize the individualism that has led to people not having babies anymore, and the individualism of parents and our own individual decisions to try and fight against the drug abuse and the opioid crisis, because we need national policy, we need nationalist policy, we need to invoke the power of politics and policy, and for our national government to be able to step in, to have national policies for this. It's very subtle, and he's very good at it, but in the bottom of it all, he's invoking both the population pyramid and the opioid crisis, not to advance help in either one of those things, but as leverage to advance the nationalism. And nationalism is a socialism. It is what it is. You've got these people involved in that too. But the only other person I wanted you to listen a little bit to here is Yoram Hazany. This guy kind of wraps it up here. I want you to listen, if I can find just a few minutes of what this guy is saying so that you can realize what these national conservatives are saying.
World, that worldview, we're declaring independence. Today, we declare independence from neoconservatism. We declare independence from neoliberalism, from libertarianism, from what they call classical liberalism. You can give it any name you want, but that set of ideas that sees the atomic individual, the free and equal individual, as the only thing that an educated person needs to know about politics, and if he or she knows the free and equal individual, then he or she has the ability to set out and rule the world. That worldview, we're declaring independence from it today.
3 out of the 4 or 6 things, or 3 or 4 out of the 5 or 6 things he lists there are our founding principles. The autonomous, free and autonomous individual, the individualism, we're declaring conservatism's independence, declaring our independence from a free and autonomous individual line of thinking. From free markets line of thinking. Neoliberalism is basically the progressive version of free markets and free enterprise. So it can be, in essence, he's saying we're declaring our independence from an advocacy of free markets. We're declaring our independence from the advocacy of free autonomous individuals.
Now, we have at this conference almost 50 speakers, and we're not going to agree on many different things, not today and not into the future. We'll have many arguments, and they're going to be exciting. But the crucial thing is that there are things that unite everybody or almost everybody in this room. And what unites us is that we are national conservatives. All right, so which means to begin with that we're united in rejecting the idea that universal liberal empire can be or is the end and aim of conservatism. All right? That means that when we look to our left, we see people who see the world in terms of individualism, in terms of individuals. In other words, they see the world through the lens of the discipline of economics. Right? When you study economics in college, they teach you to see, the choosing individual, the free individual, the rational individual. Right? That's the foundation of economics.
Individualism as economics? Well, yeah, free enterprise, free markets, the individual right to the unalienable individual right to our property, because without it, there's no natural individual unalienable right for the free exchange of that property, which would be the exchange of property owned for property desired. And you got to have an individual right to do that in order for a free enterprise to work for free, and so that you can it's the only road, the only avenue through which the pursuit of an independent happiness is even possible. It's the only earthly avenue that allows for the possibility of a pursuit of an independent happiness. And that, in our Declaration of Independence, is one of the, self-evident truths endowed by our Creator, be it nature or nature's God, with certain unalienable rights. No lien, no social lien, no social contract lien can be put on them. With certain unalienable rights. And all men are created, endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, among them life, a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Without a right to property, without the right for the free exchange of that property, and an avenue to which we could obtain some personal prosperity with which to pursue an independent happiness. Otherwise, you're just sitting there waiting for with your handouts, waiting for your ration of whatever from whoever. Right? What the hell good is that? But there's something else that he brings up here that kind of just ties into that. Let me see for a second.
And that political world, that's choosing individual, the free individual, the rational individual. Right? That's the foundation of economics. And that political worldview, that libertarianism or neoconservatism to our left, what it essentially does is it's the invasion of politics, the invasion of thinking realistically about politics by economics.
That's the fundamental Marxist argument. It's a fundamental Marxist argument. That capitalism, free enterprise, exploits the individual. You're exploiting the individual. You make an economic commodity out of the individual. You're bringing the economics into politics. I mean, holy shit, what is Marxism if that isn't it? You know what I mean? I mean, just another collectivism, just another socialism.
It seeks to reduce political phenomena to economic theory.
That's a fundamental Marxist argument. I don't. It just is. But you can get an idea of what these guys are saying. He said all these guys, the one thing that they have in common is that they are national conservatives, that they are nationalists. Just putting that out there. I mean, they've had several different conferences. You can look into these guys. I was writing articles about it when they first came out, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing from these guys. And this is slap right in your face. This is a National Socialist slap in the face to the American right. I don't know. That's what it is. And a lot of them guys, they use it. Wow, now the right is woke. Now the political right is woke and they're national socialists, and the political left is woke and they're communist anarchists. Meanwhile, America is in the middle. Our founding principles in America as founded is in the middle, targeted by both of them from both sides. Now we're targeted from the outside too. From the inside, America is targeted from destruction from our domestic politics. The left first being the ideology, the communist ideology, they got a big bang out of the big push out of the Comintern, Communist International, and the political right infusion of National Socialist tenets and ideology and mindset got their big boost from Dugin's push of the World National Conservative movement over the past decade or two. Right? Yeah. I mean, you think it's a coincidence? But anyways, and somehow coincidentally, Steve Bannon, we're going to tie, this whole national conservative, and it's tied into other things. It's not just the national conservatives. It's tied into other aspects of the populist nationalist right, including the alt-right. Steve Bannon, Nick Fuentes, Richard Spencer, Alexander Dugin all get mentioned in the same article here as being affiliated. Of course, the U.S. extremists have picked a side, Ukraine. Putin is brilliant, but you go down through here, and in this article, white nationalist live streamer Nick Fuentes has no secret about where he lies with his loyalties in the Russian-Ukraine conflict. This is in retrospect to the Ukraine. I mean, Russia sees Eurasia movement sees Ukraine as a fake, counterfeit thing, right? I don't know. They probably think it's a Russian state or something, I wish Putin was president of America. That's what Fuentes said, right? But anyways, you got all these guys are mentioned in the same article. They're affiliated. Christian nationalist Ukraine will be destroyed, added Fuentes, who describes himself as a Christian nationalist. Again, a Christian nationalist is a thing. It's a thing. It's nationalist. It's a concept, an aspect of National Socialism. We declared our independence from England because there was a national religion, a state religion in the Church of England. These guys want to reestablish a national church, a church of, it won't be a Church of England, it'll be a Church of America, where Christianity is our national religion. There's a difference between that and our founding principles. There's praising Putin, Dugin is mentioned in here too. Dugin's mentioned 5 times. This is additionally Kremlin-linked ideologue and philosopher Alexander Dugin, nicknamed Putin's brain, has had enormous influence in the far right in Europe. Yes. And in the U.S., he has fans in the likes of the former KKK leader David Duke and white supremacist Richard Spencer, who led chants of Russia is our friend. Remember, Alexander Dugin also released a video after Trump's election in 2015, or around the time of the election in 2015 or 16, in Trump we trust. I don't know if anybody remembers that, I do. Yeah. Enormous influence with the KKK David Duke, white supremacist Richard Spencer. Russia is our friend. During the violent Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville in 2017, has called Russia the sole white power in the world, according to nonprofit. I mean, come on, it's all the same malevolent show here. Is what I'm trying to show you. I'm trying to show you, and also I'm going to get to that here in a second. Russian philosopher Dugin rails against Western liberalism in Tucker Carlson show. Tucker Carlson platformed Alexander Dugin. Tucker Carlson was speaker at the National Conservative Conference, the first one in 2019. This article was in 2024, just a couple years ago, right? A year and a half ago or whatever. 2 years ago. It'll be 2 years ago in a month, right? Russia philosopher Dugin rails against Western liberalism in Tucker Carlson's interview. I want you to listen to the first couple minutes of this. Minnie P, where'd you go? Minnie P's up and moving, and she's sending me a message here.
Alexander Dugin is a 62-year-old Russian academic philosopher. He spent his life in Moscow. He was an anti-Soviet dissident as a young man. And now he is famous the world over, in the English language press anyway, as, quote, Putin's brain. But he is not a political figure here in Russia. He is, once again, a philosopher. And his ideas are deeply offensive to some people. In August of 2022, his only daughter was murdered in Moscow when a car bomb killed her. U.S. intelligence says she was murdered by the Ukrainian government, and we take that at face value. But what's interesting is that once again, Alexander Dugin
take the word of the federal government at face value while in Russia, while on their platform. Right?
Is not a military leader. He's not a close daily advisor to Vladimir Putin. He is a writer who writes about big ideas. And for this, his books have been banned by the Biden
Marx wasn't either, was he? Any of those things?
Administration in the United States. You cannot buy them on Amazon. Banning books in the United States because the ideas inside are too dangerous. He's often described, again in the English language press, as far right. We'll let you assess. But we wanted to talk to him about some of his ideas, these ideas that are so dangerous that his only daughter was murdered over them, and his book's been banned in the United States. And so we're happy to have.
When Alexander Dugin starts talking and Tucker Carlson asks him the question, what's wrong with America? Notice the first thing he says is individualism.
Have him join us now. Mr. Dugin, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me and welcome to Moscow.
Of course, thank you. So we were talking off camera. Actually, we were having a conversation that we were not going to film, just interested to meet you. But what you said was so interesting that we got a couple of cameras and put this together. And my question to you was, what do you think is happening in the English language countries? And I said, all of them, United States, Canada, Great Britain, New Zealand, Australia, all at once decided to seemed to turn against themselves. You know, this great turmoil, and some of the behaviors seem very self-destructive. And where do you think, as an observer, that comes from?
So I could just express my reading of that. It demands a little patience. So I think that everything started with individualism. So individualism, that was a wrong understanding of the human nature, of the nature of man. When you identify individualism with the man, with the human nature, you cut all the relations to everything else. So you have very special idea of the sub.
Remember, human nature is a collectivist human nature, not an individualist. You go against the collectivist human nature. You know, right out of collectivist doctrine, whatever. But anyways, I just want to say that Tucker Carlson, speaker of the first National Conservative Conference platforming Alexander Dugin, went to Russia to platform Alexander Dugin. American conservative pundit Tucker Carlson on Tuesday released an interview with Russian ideologue Alexander Dugin, who criticized Anglo-Saxon individualism and warned that Western liberal ideas would bring about the loss of human identity. They utilized that interview all over the place. You know, there was articles, you can Google that. and you can see, you know, articles out of Russia, articles, you know, everywhere over there on how Dugin schooled Tucker Carlson, you know, basically shit on America, and, you know, that's what it was. That's what it was for. They used that opportunity as leverage, right? I don't know. You think it's a coincidence? On a populist side note, Alex Jones has also platformed Alexander Dugin. Let me see if we can get that to pop up here. There he is. Yeah, can you imagine that conversation? This is... Yeah. Basically, this guy is... Yeah. Very friendly. Platformed Alexander Dugin. And that was in 2017. 2017, okay? Platforming Alexander Dugin. Steve Bannon, stirring nationalists both domestically and globally. Like I said, this article up here mentioned Steve Bannon, Nick Fuentes, Spencer, and Alexander Dugin in the same article. There's Steve Bannon. I just got a star down here, double stars. How Steve Bannon, he doesn't just stir the nationalist, populist, nationalist shit domestically in America. He does it on a world stage, geopolitical. He goes all through Europe. He's been kind of gelling the nationalist movements throughout Europe, you know, on a world stage. And so Steve Bannon speaks at the National Conservative Conference. He also spoke at the National Conservative Conference, and this was September 4th, 2025. I listened to some of this, but the funny thing about this is
every child learns in their own way. It's why I've used Abeka Homeschool for the past 10 years. With multiple curriculum options, I can choose what fits each of my children. One thrives with video lessons, another connects with the material more when I'm teaching them myself, and it's easy to adjust, year by year, subject by subject, so each child stays engaged and loves to learn, because that's what homeschool is all about.
President Trump's decision to deploy the National Guard in...
You know, I was going to have you listen to it. He speaks to basically an empty room. Speaking to basically an empty room, a couple nose pickers out there, and that's about it, you know. And yeah, it's kind of funny. But after he gave that speech, he shit on the whole freaking national conservative movement. He shit on him. I think he was pretty embarrassed about speaking to a freaking empty room. I have no idea. But they got this from Counterfire. Okay. That's on C-SPAN deal. But Counterfire, Steve Bannon, international orchestrator of the alt-right. This is an article from 2018. Steve Bannon has gained international notoriety for his role as Trump's chief strategist. Let me see what they got here. Yeah, international orchestrator of the alt-right. International alt-right. In this article, like I said before, 2017. This is a picture of him speaking at a conservative political action conference in November 2017. The article is from July 2018. So all starting, you know, at the same time. Alt-rightists assemble, you know, from all over. Right? And it kind of goes down through Bannon's Hollywood connections and how he gets in there, and from Palin to Trump. Boy, Palin. What a joke. But he was involved internationally. You know, I mean, I just wanted to put it out there that I'm not the only one who's going to tell you that. All over Italy, and they didn't like it. Most of them European people, they didn't like Bannon over there stirring shit. Get the frick out of here and go home, man. Jeffery Sachs and his past involvement with Alexander Dugin. Jeffrey Sachs has had past involvements with Alexander Dugin. Russian Policy Monitor, June 30th, 2025. This is the American Foreign Policy Council, which is, I guess, Congress, or something to do with Congress, popularizing a new imperial vision. Yeah, I got that, kind of pulled that out of this article just to give you a taste of what's in that. A number of far-right Western public figures recently attended a two-day forum. Check this one out. Noodle this one. A number of far-right Western public figures recently attended a two-day forum in Moscow, designed to promote Russia's state ideology and an ultra-conservative imperial vision of the future. The guest list included Errol Musk, father of billionaire entrepreneur Elon Musk, former CIA and U.S. State Department analyst Larry Johnson. Anybody ever heard of Larry Johnson? That's a good one. He's another pro-Russian LaRoche cultist. He was on the Schiller Institute on there with being interviewed. I'll show you. Yeah, Larry Johnson and Helga Zepp Roach, breaking through the fog of the unipolar narratives. Basically, it's an opportunity not only to shit on America, but Israel, and democracies of the West, the Western world, whatever. Yeah, so Larry Johnson, he's another pro-Russian LaRoche cultist who has also been on the same Greater Eurasia podcast with Glenn Deason.
Drinking warm water with cinnamon before bed eliminates that. Blue parasite from the pancreas. Regulates blood sugar levels.
Sorry about
Welcome
that.
back. We are joined by Larry Johnson, a former CIA analyst. So welcome back, and Happy New Year's to you and anyone watching.
Yeah, I was hoping.
I just wanted to show you that. These guys are all birds of a feather. It's all the same malevolent show here. These guys are over in Moscow together, okay? They're all over there to shit on America. He was on the same, this Larry Johnson guy was on the same Glenn Deason show to shit on America, Israel, and the West at large that Jeffrey Sachs was. He's on the same show Jeffrey Sachs was. Columbia University economist Jeffrey Sachs was there at that meeting too. Controversial British and yet another anti-woke leftist so-called conservative socialist politician George Galloway. Jeffrey Sachs was in there involved with all these guys, and they got this other guy, George Galloway, who's an anti-leftist, so-called. Galloway panders to far right. He's a British, I don't know what how you would pin him down, who has leftist, so-called conservative, socialist political tendencies. He's a who has also been on with Glenn Deason to shit on America, Israel, and the liberal democracies of the West at large. This is him.
Hi everyone and welcome. I am joined today by George Galloway, the man who needs no introduction. It's good to see you again, George.
And you, Professor, we keep meeting like this.
We keep meeting like this. And others who participated in the conference alongside Kremlin officials and pro-Putin propagandists, and Jeffrey Sachs is right in the frickin' middle of that shit. This article came out on June 2025. The so-called Forum for the Future has hosted at the Zagreb Institute, Zagreb, founded by media magnate Konstantin Melifeyev, I don't know how you say these names, sorry, and led prominent ideologue Alexander Dugin, You see that shit? See it right there. Led by Alexander Dugin. Alexander Dugin is key. It's the henchman. He's the henchman to this whole shit. Everything keeps coming back to Alexander Dugin as the pivot point for all this. The forum also served as a launch event for the Tsargrad Institute's new report, which lays out a vision for the country through the middle of the 21st century by launching the special military operation and openly challenging the hegemony of the West. Sachs is right in the middle of it. Sachs is right in the middle of this shit. Right? And British politicians right in the middle of it. Right? Russia has entered the struggle not only for its sovereignty, but also for the right of every country to its own development, culture, and religion, the report proclaims. It calls for Moscow to dismantle the artificially created Ukraine nation, like I was saying before. You know? And argues that Russia must be an autocracy to succeed, citing the regimes of Ivan the Terrible, Peter the Great, and Joseph Stalin as examples of similar illiberal greatness. From the Moscow Times. That's from the Moscow Times, you know. The Fight for Souls and Minds, Alex Jones, George Galloway, Elon Musk, and more attend far-right forum, The Future. Alex Jones was there. I didn't even see that. Oh, yeah, there he is, Alexander Dugin. In Trump we trust. The guy can speak multiple languages. Let me see what we got. Yeah, Alex Jones was there. Elon Musk's father was there. You know, Musk couldn't go himself, so he had to send his father, probably, right? You know, Jeffrey Sachs is a long time China apologist. Jeffrey Sachs, China apologist in chief. I'm just an article here. I mean, he's been called out for this. This is back in 2021. He's been doing this shit for a while, right? And that's the National Review. Here's the fucked up thing about this. The National Review is a neocon magazine. Neocon magazine. The neocons come out of the same new left as the Weather Underground. They come out of the same left as the Weather Underground. So you've got the radical Mao communism of the Weather Underground, the Trotsky communism of the New Left, of which Lyndon LaRoche came out of. His whole freaking cult come out of that same New Left. And the neocons come out of the same New Left. Then the neocons infiltrate the right, become conservatives, right? And now we've got Jeffrey Sachs being called out by those leftist neo-Trotskyists who might have dropped their Trotskyism, but they never, and might have dropped the communism, but they never dropped the socialism. Instead of just being like a nationalist communism, now they're going to be, I don't know, or global communism, or I don't know. But they infiltrated the right, right? And the Democrats, they were on Democrat and Republicans were neocons. I mean, in the Trump election, they were the never Trumpers. They were the ones who said we need to vote for Clinton. Right? Hillary Clinton instead of Trump. But they were leftists. I mean, they were Trotskyites that came just... I don't understand, but it's the neocon paper. It's just an observation. But anyways, Jeffrey Sachs from Columbia University, chair of the Lancet COVID Origins Commission, preeminent pusher of the anti-U.S. preempt diffuse proposal gain of function narrative, where you got maybe. Let me see if I can see this for a second.
They don't want you to know how toxic this is. If you're buying produce from the grocery store,
sorry about the commercial.
So first up,
I've studied the issue extensively. The one thing I would say is that I think almost without a doubt it is a lab release, and very, very likely it originated in a U.S. laboratory that was involved in viral manipulation, but in a program perhaps that wanted to test the virus in Wuhan as well, because Wuhan had bat colonies and other...
Well, anyways, what it is, he's there to deflect any blame on China while pushing the gain of function lab leak narrative over the natural zoonotic, I don't know how I'm going to say it, Peter Daszak's freaking natural origin zoonotic jump shit. Meanwhile, both narratives push the existence of a novel virus. Both narratives push the existence of a novel virus that, if you follow the biology, as Dr. Jonathan Cooey has shown, is biologically impossible as an RNA virus for that RNA to pandemic. From the get-go, from the mud puddle that they found the sequence, that they take back to the lab, and then they synthetically create purified sequences of that, and then they test it out on either a batized mouse or a humanized mouse or some shit to say that this is what's going to happen if this, but meanwhile the sequence that came from the mud puddle is still sitting in the mud puddle, but this I don't know, synthetic virology we're told is going to pandemic all over the place. Meanwhile, the RNA sequence that's supposed to be the RNA virus in the mud puddle or the cave or at the Wuhan meat market is going to pandemic all on its own naturally. I mean, if Dr. Jonathan Cooey's right and that biology is impossible, why isn't anybody listening to him? Where is the proof that an RNA virus, if it exists, can pandemic? I don't know. That whole PCR test thing, that's the other thing. The PCR test is bullshit from the get-go too. Even if the PCR test was 100% correct, it was, you got the medical freedom movement, you got the narrative of, the PCR, tests were bad because they were cycling too much, the cycle threshold. If you're doing 50, 60, 70 cycle thresholds, you need to do 30 or less cycle thresholds, and then you can find the freaking virus, man. And then you'll find the virus, but instead of just a piece of the virus. But the whole thing is even if that PCR test was legitimate and working, when the way they do the test is they take that frickin' swab and they go up into your nasal passages, which is part of your mucosal system of your immune system. Just because you're breathing shit in, I stand in the frickin' shower every day, you turn the nozzle on, and I knew years and years and years ago as a kid, we were told all the pathogens that come out of a frickin' shower head, and if we didn't have an immune system, then each one of them was capable of killing us. But we have a mucosal system, and stuff gets stuck in our nose hairs or stuck in the mucus system that you breathe it in, and it doesn't, and your immune system fights it, even though those that get in. But if you're sick, if you're not sick and they're testing, you're not even sick and they're testing you, and all this stuff that gets trapped in the mucosal system, which is part of your immune system, right? Just because you're testing it to see if it got stuck in it doesn't mean it was ingested into your system. You're picking up stuff that never made it into your system to make you sick. And they're saying that you are, and if you're not sick, it's because you're pre-symptomatic. It was all bullshit from the start on so many freaking levels. Meanwhile, the threshold argument makes it so that, yeah, the PCR is legitimate. You just got to correct the cycle threshold levels. There was so much that was freaking wrong with all that shit. And I don't know. But anyways, tangent. But you get the idea. Jeffrey Sachs. Gain of function. Lab leak narrative. And that it came from an American lab. Maybe they were working with China, I don't know. Jeffrey Sachs on with Danny Haifong, I don't know how you say his name, promoting BRICS and shitting on America here too as well. Jeffrey Sachs has got a long line of shit.
Also
on
with Israel and the also it's in military numbers or armaments, but nothing that was in the slightest decisive in defeating Russia. So this idea that the West, even if it doesn't dominate in population numbers or in GDP shares anymore, it still dominates in military power. Not so true. And we're seeing also with Israel and its mass destructive power, no doubt, in Gaza and in Lebanon. But Israel's not defeating even Hamas. It's not defeating Hezbollah. It certainly is not going to win a direct war with.
I wanted to show you that. He's over there shitting on America, shitting on Israel, shitting on democracy of the West. And guess who else is in this with him? Richard Wolff. See it right here? A guy by the name of Richard Wolff. Right there. He's a Marxist, self-proclaimed Marxist economist who shits on America all over the frickin' place. He's on all these same shows too. Just wanted to point that out. Okay. A couple of other interesting tidbits is that after the mutually alleged fraudulent election of the Venezuela dictator, president, whatever, Venezuela was denied entrance into BRICS by Brazil. So all these BRICS companies that are coming to getting their chance to shit on America because of Venezuela was denied entrance into BRICS by Brazil. just an interesting tidbit. Brazil blocked Venezuela's entrance into BRICS due to post-election betrayal. So even these BRICS countries are acknowledging that it was a bullshit election, due to post-election. So I just wanted to point that out too. Just want to point that out. Al Jazeera, BRICS war games, why they matter and why India opted out. South Africa is hosting BRICS exercises, but 2 founding members are not participating amid tensions with the U.S. Here's the thing. BRICS is an economic organization. Strictly economic organization. Or is it? We got a Russian vessel arrives at Simonstown Naval Base on January 9th, 2026, before the BRICS countries held a joint naval exercise in South Africa. It says 2 of the founding members of the BRICS alliance, India and Brazil, are not participating in the naval drills. I don't know. They backed out. Yeah, you don't know, man. Going from an economic thing to now we're a military freaking force thing. I don't know. What do we get? Yeah, see, I don't know. But anyways, BRICS. It's a thing. And it's something that in the greater Eurasia movement, which is basically the same countries, is a thing that we need to be aware of that's happening on the geopolitical stage, that's gathering its forces on the geopolitical stage. And the agenda and narrative of these pro-BRICS narratives and everything that they're out there feeding everybody, the propaganda that they're feeding everybody is being enhanced by the whole Trump move into Venezuela. It's their chance to say, see, I told you so. Wittingly or unwittingly, knowingly or unknowingly, Trump's move has bolstered the anti-American stand on the world stage. domestically as well as geopolitically, because the political left within America, that remember that was injected with the communism of the Comintern back in the earliest 20th century, is also jumping on the anti-American bandwagon for the same shit, right? But anyways, in addition to the two world socialisms of both the United Nations centered global governance New World Order and the World Economic Forum centered Great Reset New World Order that I've mentioned before, that are fighting for the dominance in the post-liberal, post-capitalism, post-individual, post-American-led world economy of New World Order, New World Economic Order. This Eurasianism, right? This Eurasianism adds a fourth dimension or option to the mad scramble among world socialist options. They're all world socialism. Every one of these options, every one of these contingencies is a world socialist contingency. For the world socialist contingencies for supremacy in the next post-American socialist world order, even though BRICS is pushing much of the same sustainable world socialist global governance that the UN and World Economic Forum are. They're all world socialisms. They got the World Economic Forum model, the UN model, and the Eurasian model. All world socialisms, contending different wolves in the same pack that's taking America down right now, or has at least targeted us for not taking us down. Then they've at least targeted us for destruction, domestically and geopolitically. And they're all pushing the same shit, the same sustainable development, the same freaking DEI, ESG shit. All the same redistributive justice. All the oppressor versus oppressed context of the Communist Manifesto shit. I mean, they have their differences too, but they're pushing a lot of the same shit. Just to put that out there. The Great Reset has an alleged conspiracy theory. This Great Reset, I mentioned the Great Reset, the World Economic Forum Great Reset. Well, the American Defamation League, right? The Anti-Defamation League, sorry. The Great Reset conspiracy flourishes amid construed pandemic. This is the American, the Anti-Defamation League. In the background for this article, which is right here, okay. The background, the conspiracy first surfaced in earnest in June 2020 after the World Economic Forum, prominent international non-governmental organization behind the annual Davos conference, introduced the Great Reset Initiative, and then they give a link to this Great Reset Initiative announcement from the World Economic Forum. But they say, an effort to reduce global inequity and advance environmental initiatives in the wake of the devastation of coronavirus. An effort to reduce global inequality? That's what the Great Reset is? The Anti-Defamation League is going to... The Great Reset of the World Economic Forum, they're saying is a conspiracy theory, even after they show and give a link to the initiative that the World Economic Forum released. But the Anti-Defamation League is itself, Influence Watch just looked this up, and this shows definitely under the leadership of liberal former Obama administration staffer Jonathan Greenblatt. They're basically a freaking mouthpiece for the Democrat leftist progressive agenda in the United States. So why would they say anything different, right? But I'm going to kind of head that off here, kind of end it here. But just to give you an idea where we're going to go for the next show and where I'm going to bring it in the next show, because I'm going to have a couple shows on this. I got some more information to bring you, but I want to break this greater Eurasian movement down. These four world socialisms This whole pack of wolves that we've got has got wolves that have targeted America for destruction. They include wolves that are working at us from a geopolitical standpoint, and wolves working at us from within our own domestic politics. It's all part of the same wolf pack. All part of the same wolf pack. And these wolves, once the carcass is down, will be contending for the largest chunk of the carcass. And it shouldn't matter to us which one of them frickin' wolves from the collectivist world socialist frickin' pack of wolves runs away with the biggest piece. There's none of those wolves in that pack hunting us down and targeting us for destruction that is going to be our savior. If we can see it for what it is, the bullshit shines through as the bullshit that it is. But for the next show, it's really that simple, you know. I don't think anybody's ever put it that simple, but that's what it is. I want to get into what these 4 contending world socialisms are and go down through them and see how they tie into different movements that you may already be familiar with that you may have not made the connection. But they are without a doubt connected. Alexander Dugin is the hinge pin, is the pivot point, however you want to put it, you know, and we're going to go from there. I'm going to call it a show today. I hope you're getting something out of it. Put a lot of work into putting this shit together, but I just hope that you're getting something out of it, and that I'm getting my point across. I hope I'm getting my point across. That said, thanks for stopping by The Liberty Perspective. I'm Joe Marshall, and I look forward to seeing you on the next show. Goodbye, and see you later.